Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, members. Welcome to members of the public as well, whether you're here in person or whether you're going to Zoom in on us. Again, if I could remind members to switch your microphone on when you are speaking so that they can duly hear at a distance. And again, to say to members of the public who are here in person, if you're just here for one item, I will have a brief adjournment after the first one, so that if you wish to leave at that point, you may do so. Have we any apologies, David, please?
Apologies from Councillor McCartney and Stevenage.
Thank you very much indeed. And so item number 2, there are 2 lots of minutes to approve. So could I please have a proposal for approving the minutes on the 23rd of August? Councillor Bull, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Dale, and all those in favour, please. And abstentions. Thank you. And now for the meeting on the 26th of September. Again, if I could have a proposal, Councillor Cross and a seconder, please. Councillor Bull, all those in favour, and again abstentions.
Yeah, that's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 3, do I have any declarations of interest, please, this evening? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Application number 2022/0124/FUL. The applicant is married to my niece, so I will not take any part in the discussion or the vote on that item.
Thank you. Councillor Cross. Microphone, Councillor Cross.
So, but I have no pecuniary interest in either.
Sorry, could you begin again so that for the benefit of people listening in?
I'd like to declare that I know the Hanbury family at Burley. That's for item number 2, and I know the McCartney family, item number 3. But I have no pecuniary interest, but I'd be only too pleased to answer any questions that our legal officer may put to me this evening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cross. I don't think you have any. No, thank you. Sorry.
Clearly, both Councillor Payne and myself are close associates of Councillor McCartney. We have been advised that while we can say something, we can't vote accordingly. So therefore, we've decided that we will not say anything and will not vote.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Councillor Andrew Brown.
Yeah, and I also know obviously Abigail McCartney, and she does some work for me as part of my business. So I don't know if that excludes me from that item as well.
We're going to have no quorum soon.
Obviously, if it affects your financial interests, as you know, with any members, if that is going to affect it, then yes.
Okay, in that case, I'll take no part in that item either.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. That's Councillor Andrew Brown. Any further? I think we are still quorum. Yes. Thank you. So item 4, petitions, deputations and questions. There are none received in general term, and of course we will take the ones as each application comes up when it's indicated. So item 5, then we move on to the planning applications, and the first one of those again is Hilltop Farm at Hambleton. And again, just for benefit of members of the public, the officer, Mr. Johnson, will present the report. We then, in this particular case, we've got 3 individuals speaking. They will each have 3 minutes and 3 minutes for questions. And at that point, we move into the debate. So, Mr. Johnson, if we could have the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As you said, the application site is at Hilltop Farmhouse in Oakham, Hambleton. The site is outlined red there. So you've got the if I can just see this, yeah. So you've got the host dwelling here, an outbuilding here, which is to be converted, and then the residential curtilage to the south of that. You've then got the Grade 2 style listed church. The host dwelling is also Grade 2 listed, and then I think the old priest house, I think it's this one, is a Grade 2 listed building as well. In terms of the site, again, just so that you can see there, you've got the garden, the outbuilding, and the main dwelling itself. The site itself is this area here. So there's the main dwelling, and this area here is the garden. You can see the dark line that goes around the village is the planned limits of development. And the purple line here is the boundary for the conservation area. So you can see the site, the house is within the plan limits of the development, but the garden is outside, and the whole of the site is within the conservation area. In terms of the property itself, as I said, Grade 2 listed building with outbuilding. The proposal is to convert the outbuilding to additional accommodation and provide a lightweight glazed link to the property and a single-story rear extension, and then a stable and garage block externally. So this is the proposal. So you can see that the proposal is to make use of the existing openings on the building, the outbuilding, and put in 3 Velux roof lights, and there'll be a small mezzanine in the roof space there. All windows look over the applicant's site, so there's no overlooking issue from that. This is the glazed link that you can see here, linking the two. So it's a lightweight glazed link, which you can see is this section here. And then you can just see a flat roof, single-story extension to the rear here, which would have a parapet around to obscure the flat roof and keep everything in keeping with the building. So this just shows the spiral staircase inside and the small mezzanine area. And this shows the flat roof area and the first floor plans to the listed building. The outbuilding. So this is the garage block that's proposed, which you can see, again, garage block with accommodation, office space above, and then the stable block. Originally, I think 3 stables were proposed. This is now being reduced to 1, and I'll come on to that in a minute. In terms of the block plan, so again, this just shows the ground floor and the link you can see there, and then the garage and stable block follow this accesses down this narrow shared access drive between and there's the property here and here, which also share this access drive, come round, follow up, and then it comes around the corner, and again within the curtilage of the property, so within the domestic garden, the garage block would be sited to the rear of the site, and the stable blocks would be sited down here. So just some quick photographs throughout the site. You can see this is one of the front, and the access drive coming along and in between the properties. This is the access drive and the outbuilding that is to be converted. Here you can see the existing outbuilding here, obviously Velux to be put in the roof space. This area here is where the rear extension, the flat roof rear extension is proposed to go. And then I'll come on to, this just shows again, going round the site. You can see this is towards the front and round towards where the church is. You can see that there's quite on there, fairly well screened from views from that end of the site. Again, this is just coming back round where the access is. So the garage block would be located in this corner here, and the stable block in the area where we are. So the stable block and garage would be in and around this boundary here. And you can see the boundary again, just to show that the site is fairly well screened from the adjacent conservation area listed buildings. Again, this is just another one looking back across the site. So the garage block would be at this end of the site here. You can see the house in the background. This shows the site across the way. So this, I think, is the property at the rear of the site, which I think that one is the one that the applicant's parents live in. I think that's right. So in terms of the application itself, as set out in the report, the relevant policies are all listed there. There has been, in terms of planning history, that's set out on page 20 of the report, and there have been previous approvals for some alterations to the listed building, and you'll see most recently some of the alterations for the glazed link, and some alterations have been granted under listed building consent, and this is the linking planning application. The application's been brought to committee at the request of, I think it was Councillor Fox had requested it to come to committee, and I think that was on the basis of concerns in particular about highway safety. As is set out on page 21 of the report, the site is in the conservation area and adjacent to a number of listed buildings. But given the design and how well screened the site is, and the separation distances in particular from the church, which is grade 2 star, it's considered that the proposals will not have any adverse impact on the heritage assets or the conservation area. Again, in terms of residential amenity, it's considered that given, again, the location, siting and design and separation distances, that there would be no adverse impact on residential amenity from overlooking or loss of privacy. Sorry. Go back. So one of the big issues around this site, and there's some additional comments in the additional items, a number of residents have written in, and depending on which side of the fence they sit, either supported or objected to the proposals. There's been concern about the use of the access, and you'll see in the report that originally the highways officer raised concerns about any increase in intensification of the use of the access from the number of stable blocks that were proposed. Since then, the number of stables proposed have been reduced. There has been debate as to whether the existing outbuilding has been used for stables, and you may hear from some of the speakers today. There are currently, I think, 2 horses kept in there at the moment. There's debate as to whether that has just been introduced. I think there may have been some back in the early 2000s, and then no horses kept there for a number of years. The fact remains that that building could reasonably, without planning permission, have been used for the keeping of horses without the need for planning permission. There's been arguments put forward around abandonment and things like that, which we don't believe to be the case in this instance. And overall, it is felt that provided the number of stables on site are not increased above what's already there. So there's already one stable there at the moment. The proposal would be to convert the existing stable and that building for accommodation and build a separate stable and tack room. Provided that there's no intensification on that basis, Highways have raised no objection, and we have recommended conditions to ensure that there will only be one stable on site, so that you can't build the current stable and use the existing building. I think it's condition 5, I think it is there in order to avoid that point from happening. So on that basis, Chairman, it is considered that the access arrangements, there wouldn't be an intensification, and that the proposal is acceptable from a highway point of view. The other issues, there has been an ecology report and bat survey done, and there are conditions to secure bat boxes to be installed as part of the application. So given that there's been no objection from Historic England and subject to the conditions proposed, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Right, in that case, we will take the members who have asked to speak. So, Mr. Steve Sutkin, please, if you'd come forward.
How do I switch the microphone?
Thank you.
This may be slightly repetitive given what we've just heard, but so forgive me for that.
That's fine. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Sutkin, and then 3 minutes for any questions from members. So start when you're ready. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I'm Steve and live at Yew Tree House, the property immediately next door to Hilltop Farmhouse. I previously lived at Hilltop Farmhouse for 23 years with my wife and 2 sons. I'd like to cover 2 key points brought up by the objecting neighbouring property and provide some background information. Firstly, on the topic of access and the driveway is perfectly acceptable in regards to access. There is no restriction on the use of trailers or any vehicles, and nor can there be. The local farmer, Will Griffin, uses the driveway with trailers to access the field. We kept horses and horse trailer at the farmhouse for years. Contrary to what's being claimed by the objector, the access allows for a totally clean single entry and exit manoeuvre. There are no access issues whatsoever, given the proposals do not give rise to an increase in traffic using the driveway. It's all personal use. As demonstrated in a submitted highways report, there is no evidence that the existing layout and its established uses have presented any highway safety issues over the past 20 years. The highways officer has no objection. I also want to confirm that we kept horses at Hilltop Farmhouse. We kept horses there from 1997 to 2005. We stabled my 16.2 hand high horse Watty and our son's pony intermittently during the summer months when the grass was lush to prevent laminitis. I can also confirm that the current owners use the stable to house their horse Vivi. From the photographic evidence provided, it leaves no doubt whatsoever that there is an existing stable which forms part of the outbuildings. The letter submitted by the planning solicitor from Howes Percival confirms there is no case for abandonment. It's been claimed by the objectors, as has been claimed by the objector's agent. However, even if it could be argued that the use of the building for stabling horses had been abandoned, which is categorically incorrect, for any purpose, it's used for any purpose that's ancillary to the residential use of the house, and its curtilage will be lawful and not require planning permission. It goes on to say there is absolutely nothing as a matter of law which will therefore prevent the current owner of Hilltop Farmhouse using that building to stable a horse which they own as a pet and ride for their own domestic pleasure. Consequently, to stable a horse in this building is a lawful use, being ancillary to the residential use of the property, regardless of whether the building has a lawful use as a stable. Therefore, the assertion made that the proposed new stable will replace the existing stable and that there is therefore a neutral impact on highways terms is both correct and as a matter of fact and of law, and is completely justified. Subsequent to the planning officer's report to committee, a document has been submitted with 17 Hambleton Village residents confirming they have no objection to the planning proposal, along with a statement from a long-standing Hambleton resident, Sue Brown, that horses were kept at the farmhouse by us. The initial objection from Miranda Hall in her position as the church warden has subsequently been withdrawn. The applicants Ryder and Alex have endured a torrid time throughout the planning application process. They've been bullied and threatened. They even had contact with the police on one occasion. The planning application is very minor and does not impact visually, unlike some of the historic developments in Hambleton. It's at the rear of the property and does not create any adverse effect on amenity or highway safety.
Could I ask you, is that the conclusion, or if you could conclude, please? Your time is about up.
Right. Well, in conclusion, it has absolutely no adverse impact on additional traffic. It's purely for personal use. There are no access problems whatsoever, and totally contrary to what has been said by the objector's agent, that he is saying that you can't manoeuvre in and out in one go. And you can, and you do, and you always do. The only person that doesn't actually is the objector himself, who reverses his car out onto the road. So I can only assume he doesn't consider it to be too dangerous, otherwise he wouldn't do that.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton.
Thank you very much.
Members, any questions to Mr. Sugden? We don't seem to have any.
Right.
So thank you very much
Thank you.
indeed.
Shall I leave this on?
If you switch that off and
Right.
retire to your seat, and then thank you. And so if I can ask Mr. Michael Collins to come forward. Again, the same rules apply, Mr. Collins, 3 minutes and 3 minutes for questions if necessary. So when you're ready, thank you.
I'm Michael Collins, architect, and I've been asked to object to the application by Mr. and Mrs. Duran. The local authority highways engineer originally requested the application should be refused on public safety grounds due to the narrowness of Oakham Road and substandard access drive. The proposed new stable will intensify the use of the existing access, leading to a loss of amenity to Mrs. Duran. Hilltop Farm ceased to be a working farm in the 1950s, when the house was sold for residential use without a paddock for grazing. The 2 barns included in the disposal became redundant agricultural buildings and have been for over 60 years. One of the barns was converted into a holiday let. In 2017, Hilltop Farm was marketed for sale, and the floor plans on Rightmove show the alleged stable as a workshop. There is no reference to a stable in the sales particulars, nor is there reference to existing stable in the application documents submitted by Utopia Limited on behalf of the applicant. The access appraisal submitted by Bancroft Consulting on behalf of the applicant states that the site currently benefits from a stable block within the grounds, and that it was understood that this had been in regular and frequent use by horses. My clients are adamant that this is not the case. They have lived in their house for over 20 years and have principal rooms with windows onto the drive. Neighbours of Hilltop Farm have confirmed that horses have not been kept in the garden of the application site. The previous owners, Mr. and Mrs. Sugden, kept horses up until 20 years ago in a field off Oakham Road, known as Wiles Field. Mrs. Martin, who occasionally looked after the horses, has confirmed that the horses were not kept in the garden of Hilltop Farmhouse. When the farmhouse was sold, the barns became redundant agricultural buildings and have been as such for over 60 years. This satisfies the lapse in use condition under planning law. The highways engineer to Rutland District Council only withdrew their objection after being told that the application was to relocate an existing stable. The above confirms that any stable use has ceased, and the proposed stable therefore cannot be considered as a replacement. The applicant's solicitor states that the building can be used for purposes ancillary to the residential use. This is not refuted. What is refuted is that Hilltop Farmhouse Garden has the capability of supporting the requirements of a horse. The volume and speed of traffic into Hambleton Village has increased dramatically as a result of the success of the Rutland Water, increasing the hazard posed by the use of the access for horse transportation. Mr. and Mrs. Durant will suffer from a direct loss of amenity with increased use of the drive, with vehicles passing by the windows to their principal rooms. The use of the garden of Hilltop Farm is inadequate and inappropriate for keeping horses. We respectfully ask for the Planning Committee to refuse the application on the following grounds. public safety, loss of amenity, and inadequate and inappropriate use of a domestic garden to keep horses. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Collins. Members' questions. Councillor Beggy.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Could I just clarify the lack of loss of amenity? And when you say increased usage of the drive, what do you view that increased usage will be? How many vehicle movements do you see being up and down that drive to account for a loss of amenity?
I think it's not a question of how many vehicles there are. It's the fact that there are going to have to be vehicles servicing, if horses are allowed to be there, the site generally, and transporting the horses to grazing, because there is no grazing associated with that.
So, sorry, Mr. Collins, I understand that. What number of vehicle movements do you see as an increase in usage? Or is that just a subjective comment?
That's a subjective comment
Thank you.
on the basis that
That's fine, thank you.
Councillor Gordon Brown.
You've mentioned horses, plural, a number of occasions. As I understand it, there's only a single stable proposed in the application that we're looking at tonight.
yes, but the applicant has said in documentation that they intend to have their retired racehorse and occasionally a pony for company.
The original
Right.
submissions.
In a single stable.
It was originally for three.
Okay.
wasn't it? Now it's only for one, yeah.
Other members? In that case, thank you very much, Mr. Collins. Sorry, if I can ask Mr. Ryder Sutton to come forward, please. Same rules apply, Mr. Saken.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I thought we should start by introducing ourselves and providing a brief background. Alex and I moved to Hilltop Farmhouse in December 2020. The farmhouse was originally my family home from 1997. My parents have suffered from recent ill health, and when my mum was diagnosed with stage 3C cancer in 2020, they decided the time was right to downsize. They were really keen to keep the house in the family and didn't want it selling to a developer. There's been a lot of very large development projects in Hambleton, but the farmhouse is very sentimental to us and is our forever home. When we moved into the farmhouse, we wanted to bring it in line with modern day family living. We applied for planning for 3 small elements, and we were told it was going to be straightforward minor planning application, and we certainly didn't expect to be sitting here today. We requested for a small extension into the outbuilding, as you can see. There was a similar planning application approved in 2001, so a precedent had been set. Secondly, we wanted to build a garage. Again, neighbours have done something similar to this, so we understood there'd be no problem with planning. This is subservient to our existing home and not a new dwelling. There's no visual impact on environment. Finally, the third element was to have 3 stables and a feed room next to the garage. Again, we didn't think this would cause any issue. We're not building a new dwelling, and it was on the site of an old shed and greenhouse and was subservient to our home. Historic England, Council Ecology Department, Environmental Health, Public Rights of Way, and the parish meeting have no objections. The highways officer put in an objection into the stables due to access. There was no issue with the other elements if the office space was confined to personal use. We therefore revised our plans from 3 stables to 1 stable and pointed out we currently use the existing stable for Alex's horse. This stable is clearly labelled on the existing plans submitted as part of the planning application. The end result meant we essentially lose a stable to gain a stable. We also submitted a report from our highways consultant, which highlighted there is absolutely no net increase in traffic up the driveway. I met with June Fox, the ward councillor, on Sunday at our parish meeting, and June highlighted she called this for planning committee prior to highways removing their objection and suggested I mention that today. In conclusion, the planning officer has recommended approval of the proposals. All major council bodies have no objection with the planning proposals, There is no increase in driveway traffic and no harm to public or highway safety. Horses are allowed to be kept at the property and there would be no detriment to the amenity of nearby neighbours. And we do have horse at said property at the moment. There is no reason why the planning application should not be granted, in my opinion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taken.
Sure,
Again,
lots of questions.
members, any questions? Councillor Beggy.
Thank you, Mr. Sugden. A lot of these questions are about highways. So I'm going to talk to our legal about the issue with historical horses, but I'll cover them off I've got now because a lot of it comes from a report supplied by Bancroft Consulting, which you use in your application. I just want to clarify a few points. Firstly, on 1.4, it's understood this is regular and frequent use by horses with access via the internal access road. What type of regular and frequent movement of horses is there currently? Just an outline.
So Alex, my wife that's sitting over there, she rides the horse out in and out of the driveway when she exercises it, in a similar way to what my parents did when they had horses at the property. Interestingly, one of the, I think Mr. Collins there mentioned about one of the Mrs. Martin looking after horses at the property. Obviously, that's incorrect. She never looked after horses at the property. Mrs. Martin didn't, but I just wanted to correct.
Okay, fantastic. So just from my understanding, when keeping a horse or a horse and companion, what sort of vehicle movements are involved? I don't know horses, so I don't know what's involved in terms of moving horses around, moving to grazing, deliveries, etc.
Not a great deal. I mean, we're perhaps talking about maybe one a month potentially in terms of if the horse was leaving the premises in a trailer, but
so not insignificant.
No. And as I said before, there are trailers that access the driveway. William Griffin, the farmer there, he uses the field to he uses trailers up the drive to access the field. And obviously my parents, when they lived there, they used trailers every Wednesday and every Saturday. They used the trailer up and down the driveway. And they've also got quite a large motorhome as well, which uses the driveway. So there is the driveway doesn't have any issues with regards to.
Okay, in that case, can you just clarify just my one final point on 3.5?
Yeah.
It says in 3.5, in lieu of this and robustness, viewport 3 confirms how mitigating highway works would be implemented within the public highway. What does that mean? I see no mention of highway works anywhere in the application.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get a trailer in and out of the driveway. They were suggesting maybe one of the posts there on the corner could be moved. Ironically, that post isn't there anymore and hasn't been there for about 3 months. So it's just obviously it's slightly tight there, but it doesn't make an issue.
And there's no issue with using the small Bellmouth junction opposite and the fact that it says here that you would need to go onto virgin curbing.
No, there's no issue. The property opposite has it's easy to exit out to the left, and there's no issue at all. I've got video evidence, and obviously the highways consultant there provided some reports, obviously, on how the trailer can get in and out of the driveway.
Yes, and this is where it said it had to use the small Bellmouth junction and would be achieved with some minimal overrun of the adjacent virgin curbing. These are the verges which they put posts in to stop people going on.
Yeah, I mean it's quite easy for it to get around, to be honest with you.
Okay, I'm just clarifying what's in the report that we've got in front of us.
As I say, William Griffin.
We are out of time, gentlemen. Are you satisfied with your?
I'm done. Thank you, Edward.
Thank you very much indeed. Fine, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Sagan.
Yeah.
We are about to move into debate, members. As far as I know, the board member isn't here, although Councillor Fox did call it in, and I would expect in the normal way the member would be here. Have we had any apologies?
No, none received.
No. Well, in that case, we simply move into the debate. So, members, over to you. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure what we're objecting to or what we're not doing. Nobody's mentioned the garages which are out the side of the PLD. And the stable block we all seem to be interested in is the highways. I've known this farm from when I started at Royce's in 1969, and there were 6 or 7 farms in Hambleton then, and farm tractors and machinery going up and down that road all the time. I really do not see what the problem is with this. I think if I'll leave it at that, but I just can't see what any problem is with it.
Well, Councillor Dale, this is why, as I say, I hope the ward member would be here because, in fact, the second highways report had made it clear there were no objections, as you indicated. And again, the Vice Chairman and I at briefing did question the legal officer because quite a bit of the representation hinged on whether or not there'd been continuous use of those stables or a gap, which in effect meant, and again, if necessary, if you've got any further questions, I will refer to the legal officer, but the abandonment bar is, quote, set very high to prove abandonment. And so your point, Councillor Dale, is absolutely valid. But if there are further questions, as I say, I'll hand over to the legal officer on that. Councillor Cross.
Mr. Chairman, we've heard some very good arguments on both sides. I beg to move that we adopt the officer's recommendation.
I've got Councillor Gordon Brown who'd like to come in before I take the vote. Yes, Councillor Gordon Brown.
Before we get to moving motions, having read the documents, there are some recommendations from the officers, not recommendations, but in fact, there's a suggestion that we should add a condition regarding the management of manure. And I'd like that added to the motion if Mr. Cross was so minded. But before we get to that point, I do have a question. Can we go to slide 18, please? Slide, yeah, probably 17 would do as well. And slide 18, slide 17. If I'm not mistaken, the new road, the new track, which comes round, sorry, can you go back 1 to 17? Yeah. The track will come round that tree, and looking at the plan, it's very close to that tree. Have we going to have tree protection required during construction of the roadway?
Mr. Johnson.
Chairman, that can be added on if that is a particular concern from councillor. You are correct. It does look like it is quite close to that tree there, so it would seem a reasonable approach to take in terms of making sure that those routes are protected.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like that added to the conditions as well. Just a point of note. Thank you. I'll just repeat that for the public benefit. There's an issue over the history of Hambleton Peninsula and Hambleton generally, and the question mark of archaeology. And I'm just wondering whether we should have a condition also, if we're going to approve the application, that in the event that anything is found during construction, that the work is stopped pending an investigation by the Leicestershire Archaeological Department, who are our agents in this matter. Would that be an acceptable position?
Mr. Johnson?
Chairman, yeah, I have no objection to that.
No, fine. Duly taken the proposal. Thank you. I think too, the very fact that we have no objection from the parish meeting is probably vindicates your earlier comments, Councillor Dale. So we have a proposal to go with the officer's recommendation for approval. It has been seconded. All those in favour, please.
It's unanimous, Chair.
And that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And again, if there are members of the public who simply arrived for this and wish to leave now, I will just pause for a couple of minutes to allow the room to be cleared. Thank you. Right, we will now reconvene. Thank you very much indeed, and move on to the next item. And again, we have some representation, so I will ask Mr. Hodgett to present the report, and then we have two speakers to follow that. So, Mr. Hodgett, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an outline application with all matters reserved other than the creation of a new access onto Burley Road for up to 213 dwellings with open space, associated infrastructure, including sustainable drainage schemes on land to the northeast of the Oakham bypass, which is this road here. This is the existing co-op on Burley Road, which goes up to Burley on the Hill. And here is Ashwell Road and the veterinary hospital at that point there. So it's basically the land between Burley Road, Ashwell Road and the bypass. But this area, the field here, is the playing fields to Oakham School, known as the Wilson Field. So that's a closer view of the site. We've got the existing co-op here, its car park, the two motor trade related businesses in this point, and then the co-op petrol station at the front, the veterinary hospital at the back, and the playing fields, which the playing fields access, I think is just here, just off the bypass onto Ashwell Road. And there's, I think that's a building that's associated with the playing fields as well in that corner. So this is the indicative master plan which has been submitted. It is only indicative and illustrative at this point, but it has been revised during the course of the application in consultation with the urban design officer to get a slightly better standard of layout. In particular, from the new access point here, we've now got an avenue which is lined with trees, as is required by the new version of the MPPF. So we've got tree-lined streets. It provides for an element of self-build housing in this area here, an area of allotments in this area at the back, adjacent to the vet hospital. So the main new access would be at this point here. The sustainable drainage would be to various ponds, because the site does, although it's fairly flat, it does slowly slope down to this way. So we've got drainage ponds here, here, and here, and they will go into a system that comes through underneath Burley Road and discharge into the watercourse at this point here, which is why the application site just extends across the road. That is simply to include the discharge of the surface water into the stream. Don't think there's anything else to say on that slide. So this is the the position of the new access, you can see there's the bypass here with the Burley Road Island and the access into the co-op at that point. So it's midway between the two. And this is the detail that's included for approval. It does show a footpath linking back to the co-op and also up to the footpath on the bypass. Whilst this footpath is shown on the verge, that verge is quite narrow, and there's a possibility that a footpath of a 3-metre width there would interfere with the roots of the hedge along the frontage, which obviously it's desirable to retain. So both the applicant and the Highway Authority are in agreement that, subject to the design of the detail, there's no reason why that footpath can't be located behind the hedge, which will help protect the hedge itself and may also be safer for pedestrians and cyclists using it. So you can see that there would be a new right turn lane here for traffic coming down from Burley into the site. This is, again, it's illustrative, but this indicates the distribution of the affordable housing units, which are shown there in the purple blocks. That's a 30% policy compliant provision of affordable housing. So just looking at some photographs around the site, this is that's the access into the school playing fields that I mentioned. You can see the vet hospital in the background. This is looking up Ashwell Road from the bypass direction, and that's looking back in the opposite direction. So they from where the emergency and cycle pedestrian access onto Ashwell Road would be, there would be a new footpath along this verge linking into the existing footpath on the corner of the bypass where the pedestrian crossing is. This is the point, you can see the hospital there, the hospital access is over to the left. This is the point where that sort of pedestrian cycle emergency access would be. And again, that is here, and that's the access into the vet hospital. Some people have raised the point that this access should also be a regular vehicle access as well as the new one onto Burley Road, but the visibility to the left, certainly from experience coming out of the vet hospital, is not very good there, and traffic does tend to come down there fairly quickly. So the Highway Authority being happy with the capacity of the new access onto Burley Road, it's not considered necessary to have to use that access as a permanent arrangement. Excuse me. This is just inside the cycle pedestrian access. You see the vet hospital again there. That's the boundary hedge to the playing field, so there's quite a width here. And that's what further down that footpath. And then that's even further down, looking at the back of the co-op. And then that's the footpath, between, I think that's the Wilson playing field, and this is a hedgerow, and then the co-op is across to the left there, the back of the co-op. So here we're looking back down towards Burley Road. The co-op is now on the right. And that's looking across the back of the co-op building. Sorry, we're just a bit further back from where we were on the previous one. So we're at the end of the track from the hospital here. So the Burley Road is down in that direction. The site boundary comes along this hedge and across the back of the co-op. And that's looking in the opposite direction back up towards Ashwell Road and the vet surgery. And this is right down in the bottom corner, nearer to Burley Road, to the north of the co-op. You can see there was a little standing water there, which shows how the water does drain in that direction. And then this is the access. There would be a pedestrian access along this area out back onto Burley Road, and this hedge along the side where the watercourse is the site boundary. Again, that's outside the gate, off actually standing on Burley Road at that point, which is there. That's looking north towards Burley on the Hill. That's looking back from the co-op entrance over the main part of the site, with the bypass over here, and you can just see the parish church spire in the distance.
This is the junction on the bypass with Burley Road. So the new, as you can see, that verge isn't ever so wide for a footpath. So there may be a footpath behind the hedge that joins into this one at some point here, subject to the detail. But further back down Burley Road, looking towards where the new access would be, midway between the co-op and the bypass, approximately here. There are crossing points here at the moment to get down the other side, and then you cross back again at the moment to the co-op. But this pedestrian facility on this side would be complete as part of the development, and that would bring you down into the existing co-op access here. So in terms of the main issues to consider, members were aware that this site was to be included in the withdrawn replacement local plan. With that plan being withdrawn, the site does remain outside the PLD for Oakham. It is in a sustainable location. It's clearly within walking distance of shops, the town centre, and the school, the primary school on Burley Road, which does have capacity at the moment to take additional pupils. So with the lack of the 5-year housing land supply, which members are now familiar with, paragraph 11D is engaged. So the presumption in favour of granting permission applies unless there are any significant or demonstrable adverse impacts of doing so. In terms of the design and layout, the master plan had been revised, as I explained, to include a better sort of overall structure, and the reserve matters will have regard to that master plan. And as you can see from, I think it's set out in the report, there is a substantial amount of open space provided, or you could see it on the plan. Thought it was set out in the report. Yeah, page 38. So there's 5.6 hectares of open space and 9 hectares of new homes. So it's quite a considerable area. And then you've got 3/4 of a hectare of the drainage basin area on top of that. But in terms of residential amenity, oh dear, what's happened there?
There we go.
Right. In terms of residential amenity, then there's no immediately adjacent residents to the site. The nearest resident, they're clearly far enough away not to be impacted by the development itself. There would be no impact on the future residents from existing residents, clearly, because again, there's a large separation distance between the two. In terms of the landscape impact, there was a report submitted with the application that concluded that there would be a slight adverse impact on some of the long-term views of the Grade 1 listed Burley House and its historic park. And that goes into the heritage impact issue as well. But in terms of the landscape impact itself, those impacts are mitigated by the retention of all the trees and hedges around the edge of the site. As you can see, the site is mainly in arable production at the moment, so there are no key landscape features within the developable area of the site itself. So there would be a significant amount of new habitat created, as well as the retention and protection of the existing hedges and trees. So, and again, in terms of the heritage, the impact on the historic assets around that part of the side of the town are none to very limited. So if there was an impact, it would clearly be less than substantial, and that impact would be outweighed by the public benefits of providing the housing that's required, together with the affordable housing, of course. Drainage, foul water would go into the existing sewers adjacent to the site, and as I explained earlier, the surface water would go into the watercourse and be retained to discharge at greenfield rates. In terms of the highways, then there's the new access onto Burley Road, as we explained, with the pedestrian cycle emergency access onto Ashwell Road. There is capacity in the local network to take the new development, particularly onto Burley Road. And again, we've talked about the provision of the new pedestrian links in or around the edge of the site. So the site's relatively flat. There's a condition requiring details of levels to be submitted as part of the reserve matters. But there's no particular issue with that. In terms of ecology, whilst the 10% biodiversity net gain is not yet mandatory, the scheme does show a 22% increase in habitat units and a 4% increase in hedgerow units. But that final metric will have to be submitted as part of the reserve matters, and Natural England are happy with a shadow habitats assessment that was submitted, that there won't be any adverse impact on Rutland Water. Archaeology has had some initial investigatory work carried out, and the advice from your archaeologist is that the condition is satisfactory to require further trial trenching. There's no other constraint from that point of view. Affordable housing is 30%, as I explained, via the 106, which will also provide the open space scheme to submit the details of how that would be provided and managed. So in conclusion, it's sustainable development on the edge of the town that is the focus for sustainable development in the core strategy. There are no technical constraints. There are no overriding demonstrable harm caused by the development. So it's recommended for approval.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodgett. In that case, if I could ask Richard Camp to come forward. Again, you have 3 minutes and 3 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Richard Camp and I come from Manton. Now, I am personally opposed to this large Burley Road development because jobs should come before housing. The National Planning Policy Framework requires that housing must be in the right place. And at the latest council local transport plan repeatedly states that the need to drive should be reduced. I believe this development does not align with these requirements and that its adverse impacts would outweigh any benefits. With around 50% of working Rutland residents already commuting out of county, largely by car, and with a lack of evidence for relevant local employment opportunities in the region of the development, it appears certain that this development would significantly increase environmentally unacceptable car commuting out of county, as Barleythorpe Parish Council have indicated in this meeting's documentation. And furthermore, as again stressed by Barleythorpe PC, overburdened essential local services, including primary healthcare and schooling, also demand that this application should be refused. The current level of commuting out of county to work surely indicates that local market housing is in excess of Rutland's real local need. And I cannot see the rationale behind the conclusion in this meeting's documentation that the development would make a meaningful contribution to housing delivery in this area for which there is an acute need. This conclusion is not one I find reasonable. I believe the County Council should adopt a local housing need calculation method that is in the best interests of rural Rutland. Via correspondence with the Right Honourable Michael Gove, who was then and is now once again Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and with his planning policy correspondence team, I've established that the government standard method for calculating local housing need is not mandatory, but can be replaced in rural areas and elsewhere by calculation reflecting real need. Relevant officers and councillors were informed of this correspondence in August. And finally, I recognise that this Burley Road site has been allocated, had been allocated for redevelopment in the withdrawn local plan. However, that withdrawn local plan did not include in its housing proposals the 650 home Quarry Farm development. And if inclusion of this development, this large development in the currently emerging local plan happens, this will provide further evidence that the Burley Road development would deliver housing that is very much in excess of Rutland's actual need to the detriment of the county. I think well-being in Rutland is at stake. Thank you.
Indeed. Members, questions? Councillor Gordon Brown and then
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cross.
Thank you for that treatise on National Planning Policy Framework. I presume you've read paragraph 11D2. You're fully aware of the tilted balance.
Repeat, sorry. I'm fully aware of.
Paragraph 11.
Well, could you repeat it? for me?
2.
Could you repeat that?
Paragraph 11D2.
Could you explain what it says?
Okay, so you don't. It requires a tilted balance that the county council has to consider all applications and approve them, except where there are exceptional circumstances. And we've advised to that effect. So
Right.
you clearly are not aware of that.
I'm fully aware of that. I just didn't know it was 11C because I haven't got the
11D.
11D because I don't have the NPPF learnt off by heart. But I believe it is an exceptional circumstance. It is in this county's absolute interest to engage in environmental care. And car commuting is not acceptable. And one has to accept
And my
that.
second question to you is, did you read the strategic housing market assessment that went with the withdrawn local plan, which clearly identified a need for 190 houses in Rutland per annum, of which 30% should be affordable for the young people who are currently having to move out of this county?
Affordable can make a big difference. If this development was predominantly affordable, the conclusion would be different. But the 190 houses was based on the government's recommended calculation for local housing need. Well, I cannot see how it could be acceptable to allow so much commuting out of county. That's my opinion. There's too much commuting out of county, which is to the detriment of Rutland.
Councillor Cross.
I was just going to thank Mr. Camp for a very explicit delivery, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much indeed.
Andrew Brown.
So, Mr. Camp, you mentioned about the housing needs to be in the best interest of Rutland. I just wondered what your opinion was of the housing need that is in the best interest of Rutland.
Well, I'd like to know, and I'm not sure if the data is available, how many of the new houses, there's something like 1,000 new houses in Rutland occupied by people who were employed beforehand, who bought these properties and are now commuting out. So I would like to see the council developing a plan that minimizes commuting out and serves local employment. So it's difficult to know what the real need is, but I suspect it is less than the government's calculation method because of the level of commuting out. That's my argument.
So are you expecting us to mandate people to work in the county almost? I don't
Well,
understand how you can.
housing needs to be near employment. Jobs should come before housing.
But people can live where they want.
Say that again, sorry.
People can live where they want, surely.
Not if it involves commuting. That's against environmental future. You know, my grandchildren are going to suffer because of poor attitudes towards environment.
I mean,
And I think the county councillors,
about that.
I believe county councillors should take that into account when allowing large developments which will generate a large amount of commuting, because that's what's going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We are technically out of time, so unless there is anyone else, thank you very much indeed. And we can now ask Mr. Snowling on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Snowling. Yeah, the same rules apply. And when you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and members, for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Rob Snowling and I'm Pigeon's Associate Director with responsibility for this scheme. Our application seeks permission for a high-quality landscape and design-led sustainable scheme that will create a new, vibrant and sustainable neighbourhood for Oakham. The scheme adopts a landscape and design-led approach that will deliver a high-quality public realm, together with buildings that incorporate the best elements of Oakham's townscape. An extensive benefits package, including extensive areas of open space, equipped play areas, community allotments, and around £1.9 million of community infrastructure levy funding for local infrastructure such as health and education, will ensure that the scheme provides town-wide benefits in addition to much needed new homes. The site's existing landscape boundaries and proximity to existing services and facilities in Oakham make the site a highly sustainable and logical addition to the town. The cooperative food store will act as a hub for the new neighbourhood with new cycle and footpath links, providing safe and convenient access to services and facilities that will meet residents' day-to-day needs. A new signal-controlled crossing on Burley Parkway will provide high levels of connectivity for new and existing residents within the town, who will benefit from new foot and cycleway infrastructure on Burley Road and Ashwell Road, ensuring that all residents benefit from high levels of connectivity. The scheme adopts a landscape-led approach with extensive areas of green space, around 6.5 hectares, linked by attractive green corridors and tree-lined streets that will create a high-quality neighbourhood within the site's well-established landscape boundaries. Ecological enhancements, including tree and shrub planting throughout, wildflower planting within public open spaces, swales and suds, will provide habitats and resources for a range of species, helping to deliver an overall biodiversity net gain of around 23%. The estate management and timing of the transfer of the on-site green spaces will be secured through the Section 106, which will provide for the transfer of the on-site green spaces to a community-led management company. This will ensure that the green spaces are well maintained and available for use in accordance with a timetable that will be agreed with the council. All new homes will include a dwelling-centric fabric-first approach, which locks in carbon savings for the life of the building. Further carbon savings through building-centric renewable energy technologies will be achieved through carbon-saving technology such as photovoltaic solar panels and air source heat pumps. Provision will be made for access to electric vehicle charging for all homes in safe and accessible location, and all new homes will include water-saving measures. The scheme will provide new homes to meet a range of needs, including first-time buyers, families, the elderly, and self-builders, including 30% affordable housing and wheelchair-accessible bungalows. We are committed to working with Rutland Council in order to secure the timely delivery of this site, which is free from constraints or the need for any enabling infrastructure that would prevent it from being delivered within the 5-year period to 2027/28. In conclusion, Land Off Burley Road will provide a high-quality landscape and design-led sustainable new neighbourhood for Oakham, with an extensive package of town-wide benefits that will provide a long-lasting positive addition. Thank you for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, questions for Mr. Snowling? Councillor Cross and then Councillor Warburton.
Has consideration been given to these new residents from the noise that might come from the playing pitches? And will there be a clause in their agreements that they shall not complain about such noise?
Thank you, Councillor Cross. So as part of our application submission, we've undertaken a noise impact assessment. It forms part of the supporting information that's included with the application. That's assessed the noise levels from potential noise generators around the site, including the playing fields, so actual observed and recorded noise levels, and those have been used to propose a series of noise mitigation measures for the scheme, which include things like improved glazing for certain facades to make sure that noise levels are an acceptable level for all homes.
Are you mitigating against the noise coming from the school playing fields? You're doing that, are you?
Yeah, so we've looked at noise from a variety of sources around the site. So Burley Road is obviously one in terms of noise from vehicles, but we've also looked at noise levels from the playing fields themselves. And the scheme, as shown on the slide in front of members, has been designed so that it will avoid unacceptable noise levels for future residents of the scheme.
Because should this go through, I would look pretty dimly upon any complaints coming from your residents from children playing on those playing fields. Now, the other thing that worries me would be light pollution. So what sort of street lighting would you envisage putting in this proposed development?
Lighting for the scheme will be the details of that will be submitted via planning condition, but we're envisaging that there will be low level lighting to respect the context for the site. So in particular, the areas to the north and northeast of the site, those areas will need to ensure that there are low levels of lighting there. So it's striking appropriate balance between safety of the residents who are using the sites, but also avoiding any light pollution from the scheme.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, maybe.
Well, no, concise, please, and I've still got one.
The emergency access onto the Ashwell Road, is that going to be tarmacked as per a proper road if it's for emergency vehicles?
So the link onto Ashwell Road will provide a cycle and pedestrian link for permanent use as well as an emergency access. So it will need to be a proper metalled surface through to Ashwell Road to ensure that it's suitable for people riding a bike or on foot as well as cars.
Councillor Paul Brown, I recognise we have gone slightly over time, but I would sooner that members had their questions answered than I go strictly on that.
Thank you,
Councillor
Mr.
Paul
Chairman.
Brown.
Mr. Snowling, try and be quick on this. Of the last two meetings we had, the presentations, on both occasions, I asked you questions about the use of non-fossil fuels in the central heating. The first occasion you said that it would, you confirmed that it wouldn't be, and we're now having a qualification on the second occasion where you said such heating was dwelling specific for further carbon savings. And then you said tonight also such heating would be air sourced or by photovoltaic cells. The small houses, which would be the affordable houses, couldn't be heated by photovoltaic cells in their own right, because the roof wouldn't be big enough. Therefore, presumably you're saying that this would be secondary heating and we'd be still having gas central heating. The problem is a lot of people, a few councillors on this tonight are very concerned about this. We accept that we can't force you to have by a condition because the government hasn't legislated yet, but we would like an undertaking, or some of us would, that you would use non-fossil fuel in all properties. And the other one was that you would have all the roads up to adoptable standards.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'll try and be brief, mindful of the time. So in taking those questions in reverse order, yes, all the roads have been designed to an adoptable standard. So the intention is that they will be adopted. In respect of the renewable energy features that I'll propose as part of the scheme, we've adopted a fabric first approach. So the starting point is to reduce the need for energy in the first place, with solar PV and air source heat pumps being a way to then further reduce the need for heating via fossil fuels. We're looking at this scheme being an electric only scheme, so not having gas. But inevitably, the details of that, and you raised a pertinent point in terms of smaller homes and the need to consider the size of solar PV arrays is something that will be included as part of the detailed design of the individual homes. But we're absolutely committed to the fabric first approach and the solar PV and the air source heat pumps providing those additional carbon savings. Just a very brief final point. Your officers and I have been in discussion regarding a condition that could be attached to the planning permission that would require those specific details to be submitted and approved. So that would be something that we would be happy to be included as part of the planning permission.
Could I just repeat, will you not be bringing gas central heating into this estate?
We don't envisage that this will be a gas heated system. As we move towards the Future Homes standard, the use of gas is being ceased. So no, we do not envisage that, albeit that's a matter for the detailed design. And I think probably the way to deal with that particular issue is via the conditions that I've been corresponding with officers on.
Again, I'm going to give members the opportunity because I think it's important and it will lead to a better informed debate. Councillor Andrew Brown, and then I've got Councillor David Blanksby after that.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Snow, you've mentioned several times photovoltaics. Are they going to be on all the houses that you build? And what work's been done to establish that there's enough capacity in the existing infrastructure to take away any existing electricity? And if there is not enough capacity, is the developer going to pay to upgrade the transmission lines and transformers that will be needed?
Thank you, Councillor Brown. So as part of our work in preparing the design of the scheme, we've undertaken pre-development inquiries with the utility providers for the site, and that's confirmed that there is sufficient capacity within the surrounding network. So that's in terms of water supply, electric supply, telecoms. So we know that there's sufficient capacity within the surrounding network. If there wasn't, the developer would pay. So that we would have to pay for any upgrades. But we're confident that there's sufficient capacity within the network to serve the scheme.
So are all houses going to have photovoltaics?
So solar PV, a combination of solar PV and air source heat pumps. We're being flexible in terms of.
To my question, that's
some may have air source heat pumps rather than solar PV.
So no is the answer.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm bringing the legal
just
officer in.
wanted to say to members that obviously at the moment we're looking at an outline scheme, so I'm feeling a bit, because obviously we're looking at it in outline. Those details will come back to members. Obviously, if it is approved at Reserve Matters, then obviously the detail I'm sure will be much more available for you at that point.
Councillor Blanksby.
Yes, I'm concerned about the public green space going into management companies. We've had problems in the past with it, still ongoing. And have you considered actually putting it into a trust, the management company, and putting a bond on it? When I say a bond, I mean an amount of money within the SIL, or the 106, to pay for the first 15 years, as you used to do, for parks and open spaces when they went to the council, when they were adopted by the council.
So in terms of, thank you, Councillor Blanksby. So in terms of the management arrangements for the on-site green space, those will be confirmed via the open space scheme that will be which is secured by the Section 106 for the scheme. So that enables the open space, the management arrangements for the open space to be confirmed. In broad terms, there are two options for how the open space can be managed. Either it's transferred over to a community management company with appropriate funding in place, or it would be transferred to the county or the town with a commuted sum for the ongoing maintenance. So I think the answer to the question that you've posed is that yes, that's something we can do, and the Section 106 allows us to do that.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because there is problems with having management companies that are business to make profit. And it starts off at a low amount and gradually through the years it goes up and up. And it's in your interest to make sure that those areas are managed properly. And for the residents, also not to put the burden of the management on them to the residents. It would be a good selling factor if you actually put an amount down for the first 10 to 15 years. Also, adding to that is we've got a lot of the issues around what would be in the management company, such as the stream, all the hedgerows, and all the trees. Would they be within the management company? Because we're talking about a lot of money to maintain this sort of thing.
Thank you. I think that was more a statement than a question, I think, yes. Is there anything else from members? Yes, councillor Payne.
One of my concerns is if and when this gets built, there's going to be a lot of people there and they're going to need health facilities. Now, our health facilities in the town right now are under severe pressure. Those people there are not going to either to the local health facilities here in Oakham, which means going around the bypass, cross or already overused railway crossing up the Cold Overton Road to there, or they're going to go again by car to Empingham or even further up to Market Overton, because there's no facility at all locally that they can use. So my question to you is, you're the developer, you're not in this for charity. What can you do to help our local health facilities cope with this influx of new people?
Thank you.
I'm going to bring the legal officer in before you reply.
I just want to make a point there. Obviously, as you know, we have a thing called SIL. So it will wash its own face in terms of having to contribute to healthcare. I haven't got the details of what that is, do you know? But there'll be an amount, won't there, a contribution?
I think it mentioned 1.9 million.
So 1.9 million. So there will be a contribution. It's just that and obviously when you look at the SIL test, it wouldn't justify having a new facility on site, so they've got to pay the 1.9 million as part of it. So yes, it is considered as part of that anyway. Yeah, I think he wants to come.
Mr. Snowling now, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just I just wanted to make a very brief point. When we initially began work on the design of the scheme, one of the first things we did was to engage with the CCG to understand what their requirements were for health within the town, to establish early on whether an additional site would be required for a new health facility within the town. And the advice that we received from them was no, they wanted a financial contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your extended members. I know I've got 4 Oakham members, I think, sitting here, but my geography goes a bit astray now, and I can't remember if one of you or more is the ward member for North East. It was Councillor Dale. I would have guessed right. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, at the last boundary alteration, this came into the Oakham North East. Outline planning permission. I just feel it's an open book. I'd like to ask officers, how indicative is that plan of what we will see at the end of the day? With outline planning permission, it can be altered and sort of done differently. And it worries me that this plan that we've got before us won't be what we end up with.
Yeah, Chairman, it's quite a valid application to make in terms of it being an outline application. Clearly, a detailed application is better so that we can consider the detail. But if I can refer you to condition 5 on page 31 of the agenda, that condition does require the reserve matters to have regard to those various documents that have been submitted with the outline application, one of which is the illustrative master plan, which you see there. So you'll have the opportunity at the reserve matters stage to assess that and see whether you're happy that it does in fact comply with that, or that it's a scheme of equal quality if it's to be different.
Thank you. I'll ask a question, Mr. Chairman. Not quite relative to what we're discussing tonight, but the executive summary states due to the shortage of the 5-year housing land supply following withdrawal of the local plan review, we blame the withdrawal of the local plan. It's the previous local plan. It's not quite correct, because if I remember rightly, when we had the barrister come and talk to us, he said that the local plan, the old local plan still had weight even now. And I mean, it probably works in reverse on this side, but I'd just like clarification that is right, that the local plan, the old local plan still has weight.
The current local plan does carry full weight in terms of it being the development plan that decisions should be made in accordance with. But the question with the 5-year land supply in paragraph 11D that Councillor Brown referred to makes those the locational policies for housing have to be considered out of date. So the line of the PLD, what is countryside, what is town, I'd consider to be out of date where we don't have the 5-year land supply, which is why we come to this position. The site allocations in the old local plan have now been exhausted. The new local plan would have kept us up to date with a 5-year rolling supply of land, but because that was withdrawn, that all went out of the window, and we're left with what was it, only 3 point something years to start with. It's now 4.1 or 4.2, I think. So we have to consider what the NPPF requires in terms of those policies being out of date. But the core strategy and the site allocations plan are full weight documents for their other policies, but in terms of the housing location policies, they have to be considered out of date.
Thank you. We've had 2 meetings with the applicants, both of which I thought was very informative. There have been questions tonight asked that we probably haven't got the answers to, but if the site stays as it is, and I can't see that I can go against it, Mr. Chairman, I think it's, I want it to be something that we can be proud of. If we're going to have it there, let's be proud of it. Make sure that we get the right mix of houses, and when you go by to the cart and do your shopping, you'll sit back and say, well, you know, we've done our bit for that site. But I don't see any way that we can refuse it, but I'll wait to hear what other members say. We've got the reserve matters.
Could I also, not to cut across you, Councillor Dale, but could I just ask Mr. Hodgett to outline what the position is with the 106? Because we have debated the impact on the numbers, whether or not we were approving with a 106 or a very close 106 or one that is remote. Could I just get you to clarify that, Mr. Hodgett?
Yes, Chairman. The developer submitted a draft Section 106 agreement to us some weeks or months ago now, which went off to our external legal advisors to deal with. There was 1 or 2 issues that have been raised from it. I was told today, in error, I informed Councillor Brown that it would be possibly 3 weeks. The solicitor told me this morning that it's possibly 4 weeks away after this meeting, should it be approved. It should be complete within that time.
So what is the impact on the housing supply? This is what I think members will be concerned with. If we're actually getting higher than 4.1 as a result of this, if we were to approve this application, or if we are not, because we haven't got a 106.
No, I think the convention is that the figures don't apply until there's a detailed permission. But clearly we need to get the outline permission issued so that they can work on the reserve matters, so that they can then be counted in the supply calculations at some stage next year.
And the amendment to a condition to get it in early.
I think as well,
Yeah.
just to clarify that point, I mean, it's going to take 4 weeks, isn't it? So that then the grant of planning permission can then happen once we've got that signed. So I suppose the impact is it's going to have a 4-week delay, isn't it, from now? But knowing how legal agreements go, I think that's quite a reasonable timescale.
Chairman, I was just going to come in and say, I think Mr. Hodgett has amended the submission timetable as well in relation to getting reserve matters in to get those in sooner than would be the usual practice. So the whole idea is that we've changed that condition so that it does eventually, once those reserve matters have been submitted and approved, add to our 5-year housing land supply issue sooner rather than later. Admittedly, it would be towards the back end of that.
Councillor Dale, so
sorry,
if I may,
Mr.
I'll
Chairman,
let him carry on.
I'm just
going
catching
to
up
bring
on my notes.
Councillor Brown.
Could I just ask Mr. Hodgett about the self-build? Are we happy with the self-build? In as far as somebody could buy a plot and not develop it for years and things like that? Have we got any?
There's only a fairly minor number of self-build units across that top end of the site. I think it's probably unlikely that somebody would buy one and make that investment without putting something in there to get something back from it. But there would be a time limit on submitting those details and commencing work in line with the outline permission as there would be on the rest of the site. So the same time limits would apply for actually commencing the work.
Thank you.
Well, what can I just point out one other thing that I didn't point out earlier in terms of the co-op? There will be new pedestrian accesses at this point and at this point here into the co-op store. When it's open, there will be lockable gates there. So the new residents will have safe and easy access into the co-op store.
Just a quick one. Nick said that we'd have the opportunity to consider reserve matters when they were coming forward. Do I take that this can come back before the committee to consider the reserve matters? Because I think there's quite a lot of concern being expressed already at the fact that it's a bit nebulous what we're being asked to do. And I do think I would like it to come back as a ward member in Oakham, albeit Oakham South, for consideration by this committee on all reserve matters.
No problem with that. I think a development of this scale we would probably bring back to committee anyway.
To committee, yes. Yeah. And then furthermore, I'll undertake to make sure that it will. Councillor Blanksby. Thank you.
Councillor Brown, I think.
Well, I've got Councillor Ball, or Councillor Gordon Brown. Sorry, I looked. Yes, thank you.
All right, go on then. Okay. All it is, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We've mentioned a couple of figures, 1.9 million. So I guess that is just indicative until we go forward, because obviously with inflation, what it is. I think, thank you. The other issue I think we have to be careful of, and I do realize and acknowledge that our officers are in a position where the legislation or the rule book says, because we do not have a 5-year housing supply, but that's okay. But common sense also will apply that if we approve this, then it's, let's say, round figures, it's 1-year supply. If at a future planning meeting, because we know there is one coming through, the 650 for Quarry Farm, that 680 gives you 4 years housing supply. And we are developing our new local plan. It is possible, it is mathematically possible. Well, Gordon Brown would shake his, Councillor Brown would shake his head, but it would be mathematically possible that we would have approved way in excess of our 5 years. And I know when we had QC advice, 7 years would be a comfortable protective number going forward. And I certainly respect it. And I don't think officers can be asked to answer that, but I do think we have to have a care with the position that we are in with that. And I'll leave it there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson,
if I can just comment on that, I won't go into the the specific of figures, I think clearly what as an authority we are trying to do is increase our housing land supply. So as Mr. Hodgett said, when we first did the assessment, it was around 3.6 years. It's gone up to over 4 years now, and it continues to be going in the right direction. And there will be a point when, hopefully, relatively soon, we will get to a 5-year housing land supply. That's what we're all aiming for. As part of the assessment and calculation of the figures, it's not just what you approve, it's also what can be built. And it's those build out rates. So although we may approve 650 or something on, say, the Stamford side, realistically, they'll probably only build 50 to 75 per year, something like that. That's quite a high build out rate at the moment. So that's what goes into the figures. But we are working clearly in the right direction, and there are reports that will come back to members to update them on the most current position.
I've got Councillor Gordon Brown, then Councillor Banksby.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. I would like, and this is not on this application, but a more general point. I think it's very important that members understand the 5-year housing supply and what the calculation is. And I believe we're about to just complete the end of September figures, or September figures. So when those are published, it'd be really useful to know the absolute position, because my understanding in talking to Roger Ranson, Policy Development Manager, was it was on the application of reserves matters that they were included in the 5-year housing supply, not on the approval of the reserve matters. I think that's important, but I'd like that clarified by policy development. And the build out rates, I think, is an important one. And that's why I was shaking my head, Councillor Boone, because 10 years is a long time in house building. Can I just pick up a couple of items? The reserve matters to me is quite an important one. I come back to that again. I think we had a previous application where we asked the developer to submit his reserve matters within 18 months. And I see we're going for 24 months this time, but I think there was a discussion with the developer for a shorter period. Would it be possible to have a discussion with the developer to say 18 months would be preferable? I think members would certainly wish that, if we approve it this evening, to have as short a period as possible. And looking at the developer's own plan that he's put forward, he's certainly going to be doing that. So he shouldn't be saying no to that particular one, I'm sure. The next one is, I asked a question about the housing mix of the officers today. I've had a response from Mr. Hodgett, and I'm pleased to say that the illustrative, and it is the illustrative master plan, says that it will meet the mix of size and tenure that our strategic housing market assessment, the SHMA, Councillor Frogcross, the SHMA has, which is up to 5% 1-bedroom, up to 30% 2-bedroom, up to 50% 3-bedroom, and up to 20%, 25% 4-bedroom. So that is in line with the SHMA, and this development will be meeting that requirement. And that's something which I think we're very good. It's great to see, because we want those smaller houses, particularly for our younger people, to keep them in this county. So that's really good news from the developer. Moving to the highways, and it's a pleasure to see Robin Green back with us again. There's a couple of issues there. One is that we're suggesting that, and this is an important matter tonight, because we are talking about the entrance. This is what we are approving absolutely this evening. There's two aspects to that. First of all, the speed of vehicles on Burley Road. Highways have indicated that the speed at 40 miles an hour is quite acceptable. I think there was a suggestion that maybe at a later date, 30 miles an hour might be required. Can I suggest that as part of the discussions with the developer, we invite them to provide a speed indicating device in line with the ones that we are now installing in the county, which also logs the speed of vehicles along Burley Road. That'll give us absolute figures as to the speed and volumes of vehicles between the new entrance and the co-op somewhere up Burley Road to the north of Burley Road. So that would be a recommendation, maybe an informative on that.
I think, Chairman, through you, it's probably something that perhaps Robin and Highways can pick up outside of the planning system.
Okay. I think that'd be useful, but I'm seeking for the developer to pay for it, not for the county council to come out of our budget. Then my final point, I think, Chair, is in relation to the road width. Just slightly worried by the Highways view that we should reduce the width of the road from, I think it was 6.5 metres to 5.5 metres. I can understand that within the development, and in fact, there's some question marks once we get down to the detailed design about off-street parking or visitor parking, and using that space for visitor parking would be very good. But I just wonder at the entrance whether that is a wise move at this point in time. And 5.5 metre for 200 houses is the right thing to do, and maybe a wider at the entrance and then narrowing down as it was further into the site might be a more appropriate. Now, I'm not a technical highways engineer, but I just feel that uncomfortable about a 5.5 metre entrance into the site, and maybe our highways engineer could comment on that before we go further. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Originally I think it was 6.8 metres wide, the access, and they did that for the tracking for a refuge lorry to make sure a vehicle could get in without going on the other side of the carriageway. It's been reduced down because what you can find when you've got really wide accesses is vehicles do turn around the corner quite fast, and because you're going into a residential development, you want to be able to slow vehicles down as they're coming around. So instead of being able to just almost come from a 40 and come straight around into the development, which would probably be a 30, is to slow vehicles down is the idea. But I can understand where your concerns come from.
Yeah, my concern is now the refuse vehicle is going to be on the other side of the road, and there's a safety aspect of that. And we have enough problems in other developments with refuse vehicles. I'm sure Councillor Blanksby will nod his head on that one.
With this development, they've shown a radii of 8 metres, which is quite a sweeping bend anyway still. So you could narrow the road down and the vehicle wouldn't go over the onto the other side of the carriageway. But with the 6.8, obviously you've got a bit more movability. It should be fine with this development with a 5.5 width, and with the 8 metre radii, it should be okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Hodgett, had you any further comment on Councillor Brown's first questions? No, that's,
yeah.
But
We've had the discussion over the time limit in the conditions with the developer. We were originally going to suggest the 18 months, but the developer came back and requested that members did give consideration to 2 years, which they pointed out is still a year less than the normal standard 3-year condition, on the basis of the scale of basically the scale of the scheme, and the fact that it was likely to be a phased scheme. So they didn't want to crop up, they didn't want to face potential issues with the reserve matters application that might get refused, which if it's only 18 months, it means the permission would have died by the time that they would sort of get a subsequent approval. So it was just that 6-month difference because of due basically to the scale of the development that the applicant had asked that it be 2 years rather than 18 months.
did that satisfy your original query, Councillor Gordon Brown?
Just check.
Yeah.
Chair, as I read the condition, and I'm not a legal person, I'll look to our legal person to question this. Condition 1 says application for approval. So it's I presume on that the first application for approval of a condition has to happen within that 24-month period. And that's why I was saying it's not to do with, they come in, it's rejected, there's further discussions, etc. It's that first application has to be made within that period. Am I correct?
And that is absolutely correct. It has to be made. It has to be submitted, or the planning permission obviously falls away. But what I will just say is that the scale of the scheme, I mean, I'm a big advocate of bringing this down, obviously, with our 5-litre land supply, making sure that we get development on site as soon as we are. But this is a very large scheme, and you would normally see out of normal scenarios that you would give 5-year to a 5-year, wouldn't you, for reserve matters, all of the reserve matters be submitted. So I don't actually think in this particular scheme that 2 years is that excessive. Anything, I think, if you've got 100 dwellings or something under there, I think the 18 months is very reasonable.
Thank you, Chair. I think, can I just
sorry, Councillor Gordon Brown.
Just off, there's my last comment. That's a very good point from our legal advisor that in future, anything 100 or below should be 18 months and anything
No,
above should be
because they might be
24
right,
months.
they may
And
be
I'll
right.
accept that, Chair.
No, Councillor, I will caveat that on the basis that there could be a lot of ground, works to do.
Just a quick one, highways. Are you happy with the access from the co-op, or I always find it very difficult there, the line of visibility getting out of there. Is there anything we could do to improve that?
As in improve the co-op access itself or
Sorry?
how do you mean improve the co-op
Well,
access?
the visibility, when that hedge grows up, I know they cut it quite often, but when that hedge grows up, you can't see down the road. It's very difficult, and I just wondered whether we could put something in there to get the line of visibility better.
Well, with the access itself, I think we'd be able to condition that they'd have to keep the hedge cut back for the within the visibility displays because it's within the landowner's permission. Is that right? It's within their land, isn't it, the hedge? Yeah, within their control. So we'd be able to condition that they keep that hedge cut back, which could, if it's then through they put the open space to like a management company, we'd have to obviously work out who's going to maintain that hedge, but we would be able to condition it.
Councillor Blanksby.
Yes, there's no mention on the plans of how many phases there is of this development. Could you point out if there is any phases? And if there's not, we need to know the phases because for the affordable housing, we need affordable housing in each phase so that the affordable housing gets finished before the next phase goes ahead.
Chairman, in terms of the affordable housing side of things, I think that'll be picked up in terms of the section 106 agreement. There's, I think there is a condition, condition 26 does cover phasing, but specifically with affordable housing, there would be usually trigger points within the section 106 that requires the affordable housing to be completed prior to the X number of market dwellings, something like that, for that very reason.
Can we enforce that? Because we've had experience that it's not being done.
That's thoroughly enforceable.
I think, yeah, it is. It'd be within the section 106. Normally what you first obligation will be is that they have to submit a phasing plan to be agreed by a affordable housing officer, and then they have to fit in with that. So I will make sure, Councillor Blaseby, that is in there.
And that, to be quite honest, it should be on all phases should be finished before the next phase is started.
Yeah.
Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just one point, and I think Mr. Johnson may have covered the point I was going to make. Picking up on Councillor Dale, we need a development that we can be proud of. And we have to qualify exactly what we mean by affordable. But I would hope that our officers in working with the developer will think of how we place affordable, how we actually position, because as Councillor Gordon Brown will remember, when we had a project working on the officers' mess at Edith Weston, we did then say that we would rather like affordable to be in a pepper pot configuration. We have some very nice developments in this county, and they are nice developments. And then you go around the corner on the same development and we have a block of affordable, and there is a real deterioration. Well, I thought there was indicative that there may be some banks, and I realize it's only outside, but I think that's just important at this stage, and to actually make the whole application super efficient, that we then come back and say, can you revise that? I agree, but I'm just making it as a point. Okay.
We've previously worked on the basis that there should be a cluster of no more than 15 in any one development. So I think there's, you can see that they've suggested there that would comply with that sort of requirement anyway.
It would, but well, it's a personal thing. I would prefer that to be less, because for me, that is not pepper pot. But obviously we're at an early stage, and I'm just putting that in for hopefully working for the best planning and the best site that we can have. Thank you, Chairman.
Did you want to come in, councillor Andrew Brown? There.
Yeah, just picking up on councillor Bull's point now, I was going to ask a similar question because developers seem to push the affordable housing into the least desirable areas of the sites. So again, can we stipulate that that doesn't happen in this case? And just a point of clarification on slide 28, it shows the discharge into the stream going across the road and onto some other land there. Is that land in the same ownership? That is it as the site? Okay, thanks.
Other members? Are we getting to the stage where somebody is prepared to move? Yeah, thank you, councillor Dale. In accordance with the officer's recommendation, do I have a seconder? Councillor Beggy, and all those in favour? And against?
Make that 9, Chair.
And abstentions?
2 abstentions.
That is duly carried, duly approved. Thank you very much indeed. And again, as I said at the previous one, if members of the public wish to depart, I will give a very brief, I'm very aware of the time. I'll do a very brief adjournment. Thank you.
Are we having a comfort break?
Comfort break if you like.
What, we're having 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. So
And moving on to the third and final application this evening, and it's Mr. Thorner, is it? Welcome back.
Thank you, Chairman. It's good to be back. I'll hopefully not keep you too long on this item this evening. The application is before you this evening because the applicant is a member of the committee. The proposal is for a series of solar panels on a commercial building operated by the applicant on a workshop just off American Lodge Lane to the south of Brook. This is the application site here. You've got American Lodge Lane runs along the north side of the application site and Brook Road, with Brook itself being to the north. And then you can just see on the aerial photograph, this is the commercial building that is proposed to host some of the panels, with the remainder running along the northern edge of this field, just behind the hedgerow. This is the existing and proposed elevations in relation to the scheme. You can see on the drawings to the bottom, there's a group of solar panels on the south wall of the building and the south facing roof slope. And then in some further visualizations, the ground mounted solar panels running along the northern edge of the field here. Again, that's just a further illustration of the location of the ground mounted panels in relation to the main commercial building. Quickly moving on to photographs, that's the north elevation of the existing building taken from American Lodge Lane. And then a view looking south towards eventually Uppingham. And then a further panoramic shot. This is looking sort of southeast, and with the obviously the field hedgerow in the foreground, behind which the panels would be located. This is a view looking north, back towards the site from further south. This is approximately the first point where you can actually see the building on which the panels are located. And just to make it clear, it's that building there, just on the horizon. So you can see how sort of limited the views of the site are. And the policies there are listed in the main report. Obviously, the key policies in relation to the proposals are those supporting and the provision of low carbon energy generation. And just to summarise the scheme, it lies within the countryside. We've got limited public visibility of this scheme. Most of the panels are on an existing building, which obviously is an intrusion to an extent within the landscape, with the remainder behind and set against the background of a hedgerow. The panels will sit below the overall height of that hedgerow as well. National and local policies both support provision of renewable forms of energy generation subject to their specific impacts being acceptable. And in this instance, officers are satisfied that there are no specific impacts arising from the scheme that should result in recommendation for refusal.
Thank you. Now I'm going to take Councillor Cross first as one of the ward members. Councillor Cross, then Councillor Blake, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, as long as these solar panels are non-reflective, I don't think there'll be too many complaints. Now, as citing them behind the hedge, well, I would have cited them in front of the hedge so they got the sunlight, but that's up to the applicant entirely.
The hedgerow is on the north side of the panels, so.
Sorry, I'm being silly. So are they going to be non-reflective? That is a serious point because they will be seen if they are reflective.
Can that be, are they non-reflective?
I mean, I think that the whole purpose of solar panels is to draw the light in rather than reflect it away. So I couldn't categorically say that there won't be some on occasion, but I think the whole way that solar panels are designed is to actually draw the light in rather than reflect it away. If it's reflecting it away, it's not as efficient as it should be.
I quite understand that, but can we just make certain, please?
I think we can put some thing on the decision notice to say that the panel shall be sited so as to ensure that there is no glare or reflection, something like that. And that if there is, that they'll be amended. We've done that before with spotlights and things like that. So I'm sure that we can word a condition up if members are happy to do so, to ensure that.
This is going to be a fairly brief discussion.
Yeah.
But if there are certain panels that will not reflect.
Yeah, I don't believe there will be, but we
Fine.
can make sure that we've got control.
I will be happy. I don't like them.
I've got Councillor Blanksby, then Councillor Dale.
Yes, just a small question about will the electricity be going back on the grid, or will you be using it on site, or will you be storing it in batteries?
There's no battery storage proposed as part of the
There's no
scheme.
batteries.
My understanding is that the electricity generated is to serve the business rather than being fed back to the national grid.
But some will have to go back to the grid, or they'll have to draw some off the grid.
Potentially, yes.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to qualify what Councillor Cross has said, it is a very important part of Rutland, that landscape there. To have anything on that hillside that's going to cause reflection will be devastating to myself, as I go along there quite a lot. Yeah, I mean, no problem with the building itself. I mean, it's along the hedgerow. We've got to make sure that it's not seen from the Ridlington Preston Road, and we did that with the co-op when the co-op came up. We chose the glass that was in there to stop it from Downbrook Hill reflecting, so that you didn't see it. That's why the dark glass is on the co-op, and the same there. I wouldn't want to see anything reflecting across the valley towards Ridlington and Preston that way.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as Mr. Johnson has indicated, I think we can certainly control that through the conditions on the permission.
Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chairman. To say I am supportive of the application, but just as a duty of care perhaps that we have, and I'm not an expert on solar panels, and I'm coming away now to where the hedge is. I understand that there are low to the floor mounting systems, and of course there are, as we had I think at Langham, very much on higher post. Do we or should we put some condition that the height of that hedge is maintained so that those panels are not seen from the road? Should an HDV take out a 40, 50-yard stretch in an accident, that it would need to be replaced. Am I being a little uncaring here? But I just think perhaps we should have some condition going forward years ahead. And I'm not sure if that's possible. I would ask the experts, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I'll bring Mr. Johnson in and then Mr. Councillor Dale.
So Chairman, so just in response to that, yes, again, I think it's reasonable. There is a cross section showing the panels in relation to the hedge, so they would be, you know, at the highest point, the tip would be level, but we can certainly put a condition on to make sure that the hedge is maintained at a minimum height, and we'll base that on where the hedge is now.
Councillor Dale.
Confused. Don't take a lot. When you say behind the hedge, is that in the field or on the roadside?
The panels will be in the field side.
So there won't be a hedge in front of it?
It'll be
looking over
behind the
landscape?
hedge as viewed from
Yeah, that's
America
what I
Lodge
was-
Lane.
Councillor Blanksby.
Just an observation, it seems a bit too close that to the edge, because you've got to maintain the edge from growing. And also, by taking it further back, you're going to have the edge a bit higher.
Very good point.
Do that.
Just an observation.
Chairman,
Mr. Johnson.
I think if it's acceptable to members, what we could do is clarify the maintenance of the hedge with the applicant and agree the sighting by way of condition if they do need to be. I would envisage it would be by a matter of like meters in order to possibly allow some further maintenance of it, but we'll clarify that with the applicant, and if members are happy, we could possibly defer that part to in conjunction with yourself, Chairman, to agree the precise sighting if there is a need for an amendment.
Because there'll be a plan.
Sorry, I'll bring the legal officer in.
No.
Right,
I'm just saying-
one meeting, gentlemen, please. Sorry. Yeah,
No, I was just going to make the
that's all
point
right.
that.
Councillor Gordon Brown.
No, yeah, I was just going to say that'll be an approved plan, won't it? So you're going to have to ask for an amendment of that approved plan. That's all I was just saying.
So what I was suggesting is that if members are minded to approve tonight, that we rather than approve, you defer it to myself in discussion with the chairman, just to clarify the sighting of those things, so that if we do need a slight amendment to get them further away from the hedge in order to allow maintenance, I can agree that with the chairman, and then we'll delegate the decision.
If you're happy with that, members, I would just say, as the other ward member, that I'm aware of quite a lot of informal consultation between the applicant and the residents of Brook, and certainly I'm not aware, I don't know if William is, of any objections coming from the immediate Brook residents. It is indeed, and as Mr. Thrower pointed out to Councillor Cross, there is a northern aspect on the other side of the hedge. But no, if you're content with that, gentlemen, I'll Councillor Gordon Brown.
Chairman, just going back to the glare issue, I seem to recall when we discussed the Langham solar panels, that there was a report provided by the developer on glint and glare. I seem to remember Councillor Gould being very excited by that. And I just wonder if we could maybe suggest a condition, again, leaving it to the officers and the chair, that we ask for a glint and glare report, just to make sure that the glint and glare does not impact on, particularly on the roads around the area, because they can angle the panels accordingly to avoid that. So I think that it's actually called a solar glare assessment technically.
Mr. Johnson.
Chairman, I think that obviously the reason that it was that was required on the Langham assessment, and again similar with the Malal Pass one that we've got, is the scale of the development. I think in this instance there are two options. and it's open to members, we can require that up front, and there's obviously a cost implication to the applicant on that. Alternatively, what we can do is similar to what we have done with regards to things like spotlights and things like that, where they can, again, at long distance, cause glare and things like that, is that where a problem is identified, that the applicant's required to mitigate that. And because it would be quite feasible to either remove or adjust the angle of the panel, or possibly replace it with an alternative finish if there were such a problem. So I think that there are two options there. Is one, that we require a condition that if there is a problem, that it's mitigated, or two, that you require the glint and glare assessment up front.
There's another observation about the panels. They usually they like them at 45 degrees, 35 to 45 degrees. On the side of the building, if we stipulated that they had to be at, say, 35 degrees, then that would get rid of the glare problem.
I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're just with those to make sure that.
I think the issue that you would have there is that you're then putting panels on at an angle on the side of the building, and they would then start to project quite considerably beyond the side of the building. There'd have to be some sort of supporting framework.
I mean, it's only an observation.
I'm going to be quite happy about what I've said earlier on, and I love the glare. I can use that.
I'm happy with the additional condition. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
Happy with this.
Are you happy to propose?
I'm happy to propose with the additional condition that we suggest, the two conditions I think were suggested are an informative point. Correct.
Is that for the mitigation as opposed to a plan?
Mitigation as opposed to a glare and glint assessment.
Yeah, thank you. A seconder, Councillor Blanksby.
So, Chairman, it's deferred to yourself and our own officers to negotiate the a siding issue about maintenance of the hedge. So if the panels need to be moved away, that we have an additional condition about mitigation should there be any glint and glare, and that there's a further condition about the height of the hedgerow adjacent to the road.
Maintained, yeah.
Yeah. Maintaining that height, yeah. So I've had a proposal, had a seconder, all those in favour, please.
That's unanimous.
And abstentions, no, you didn't take part in this. No, that's absolutely fine, so, yeah. Get the protocols right. So, oh, we've got the appeals. Sorry. Sorry.
He can't take.
I know, no, I was just, I did the same, I did the same thing, Councillor Ball, that I was forgetting the protocols. The appeals, please, Mr. Johnson.
Chairman, so no decisions back this time, but you'll note that we have had a number of appeals received. One is at 19 Main Road, Barleythorpe was sorry. One new appeal at 19 Main Road, Barleythorpe, to increase the roof height to provide secondary floor accommodation and front and rear dormers, and that you'll see at the top of page 76. What was refused in terms of what was proposed there, and considered to be incongruous addition and over development of the original dwelling, and also concerns about the fact that they're altering the roof and there was no bat survey. The next one, 7 Cedar Street, Boston, in Rutland. This was for replacement windows to a front elevation and entrance porch. This was because the proposals were to use UPVC windows, which would be contrary to policy and have an adverse impact on the conservation area. And then I think the final one, Bornston Road, Oakham, the application that members will recall was refused for the 100 dwellings, North Braunston Road. The appeal is now in on that site as well.
Sorry, Councillor Gordon Brown.
Chairman, just on that last one, given the decision made on Ketton, I just wonder what the advice from officers is in relation to Braunston Road.
I think in terms of Braunston Road position, there I think were two arguments that were put forward at the time. From memory, I think one, sorry, I don't have to remember, they're written down in front of me. I think so. One was I think about the landscape side of things, and that as I think I said at the time, I think, you know, we've got a good case for, and we've sought, I think at the time when it was refused, I did express some concerns about the second part of the reason for refusal around the community infrastructure levy. Members at the time proceeded to include that as the reason for refusal. We have sought as part of our appeal statement to defend that reason, but we will have to see what an inspector makes of it. Like I say, I think it will be tricky to defend that element.
I think it was outside permitted development as well, whereas at 60 hours the other side was in permitted development.
The planned limits of development, you are probably right in terms of that. To the north would have been outside of the planned limits of development, I think.
Any other questions for the officer? Yeah.
Not on this particular subject, but I would just like to, if we have 2 minutes, I would just like to raise one matter which I think is relevant, but you were about to close otherwise, are you? Chairman?
Otherwise, I would close, and we have got the update on the enforcements, which I think members will be interested.
But you want to do the enforcements first? Or?
Oh, well, no,
Okay.
Well, would you like this public is really the thing.
No, I'll do this.
Outside the meeting. In that case, we will. Councillor Cross.
I'd like to echo Councillor Brown's welcome back to Robin. It is so nice to see you, and I'm sure we all trust that the extension to your family is growing well. Lovely to see your smiley face. And is the child doing well? Well, the right time to get out. Well done.
You came from one knot of noise to another, yes. At that point, I think it's 17 minutes past 9. I will declare the meeting closed. Ken, if you